And good afternoon, Producer Susan. How are you doing on this fine Memorial Day?
I'm doing good, Jersey Joe. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's raining, and I'm going to be out on vacation the next couple of days. So I appreciate you giving up your Memorial Day afternoon to do this podcast. Um, and by the way, our quote of the day by the way, just to confirm, today is May 27th. It's Monday. It is Memorial Day.
Hmm.
Um, and our quote of the day is from about Memorial Day. Well, it's not directly about Memorial Day, but it's about heroes. Um, and the stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll tell you about Biden's decision to release 1 million barrels of gasoline from our country's strategic petroleum reserve. Did you hear about that?
I did hear about that.
And I'll tell you why it's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. I'll give you the details why it just completely pointless. In a close runner-up, we'll play a little clip of by the way, President Biden claiming that he was Vice President of the United States during the 2020 pandemic. Um,
Wait, what?
Yeah, 2020. He was vice president in 2020, right?
Um, Not on this planet.
Okay. All right. I'm going to play a rather long clip, by the way, of Senator Ted Cruz questioning a Biden federal judicial nominee about her qualifications to be a federal judge after she agreed to sentence a convicted male rapist to serve out his sentence in a woman's correctional facility. Does that make any
Uh,
sense to you?
no, not none so ever.
All right. And you remember those 6 foot blue bar lines on the floor, the social distancing?
Yeah.
Aren't you curious about the science behind how they came up with the 6 foot rule, why it wasn't 4 feet, why it wasn't 10 feet? Are you curious about how they came up with 6 feet?
Yeah, the length of my dog's leash.
Okay. Well, we'll tell you how that came up. We'll play a clip, not a clip, but we'll quote the head of the National Institute for Health when he was questioned how they came up with the 6 foot rule. Um, Do you think you're more likely or less likely to be struck by an electric vehicle versus an internal combustion powered vehicle if you're a pedestrian?
You're probably more likely to be struck by electric vehicle because you can't hear them coming.
And they take longer to stop because they're heavier.
Yep.
We'll tell you the results of a study that tells you exactly how much more likely you are to be hit by an electric vehicle. Do you know what a meme stock is?
A stock of memes.
No, a meme is a stock that gets promoted on social media via memes. And we'll tell you what happened last week when two stocks were the subject. Like if Kim Kardashian comes says, I really like this company. I think it's going to do great things. If
Hmm.
Kim Kardashian were to do that, the stock would surge. Well, we'll
Hmm.
tell you what happened about two meme stocks last week. What happened to their price, how it went up, and how it came back down. And last but not least, our taxpayer lead shot comes to us from Detroit, where a man is accosted by two armed thugs, and he winds up shooting and killing one of the thugs with the thug's own gun. How's that for turnabout? How's that? And by the way, and of course, the second thug stuck around to try to help his buddy, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Right. All right. So here's our quote on this Memorial Day. This is from author Emily Potter. You maybe never heard of her, but I just thought it was very appropriate for today being Memorial Day. And here's her quote: Heroes never die. They live on in the hearts and minds of those who follow in their footsteps. Isn't that just, let me
Yep.
read that again. Heroes never die. They live on in the hearts and minds of those who follow in their footsteps. I just thought that was incredibly fitting for today. What do you think?
Yep. Yep. I agree.
All right. Um, So that's our quote of the week for Memorial Day. Anyway, last week, early last week, just before the holiday weekend, President Biden announced that he would be releasing and offering for sale 1 million barrels of gasoline from our country's strategic petroleum reserve. And by the way, a barrel, do you remember how many gallons in a barrel of oil or a barrel of gasoline?
55.
No, it's 42.
Oh,
We talked about how that got started, right? Whiskey
yeah.
barrels.
Yeah.
Right. So 1 million barrels is 42 million gallons of gasoline. Now that sounds like a lot of gasoline, right?
Yep.
And he said, well, we're going to do this to hold down gasoline price. Let me put that figure into perspective. Per the U.S. Energy Information Administration, U.S. daily gasoline consumption is 368 million gallons per day,
Mm.
which works out to 26.6 million gallons per hour, which means, I won't ask you to do the math in your head, but that means the 42 million barrels that he's releasing is enough to power 1 hour and 45 minutes. It's enough to cover the 1 hour and 45 minutes worth of U.S. gasoline consumption. So how much of an impact do you think an extra 1 hour and 45 minutes worth of gas supply is going to have on the price of gasoline?
Not much.
Not much. My father, when he was alive, he had a saying which I think is very, very appropriate for something like this. He said it wasn't about this specific thing, but when people talked about things that had virtually no impact, he would use this phrase. He said it would have about the same impact as a fart in a gale of wind. So,
Yep.
um, so again, so this was purely political pandering. And if nothing, by the way, in order to do this, he had to completely deplete the Northeast Reserve. These petroleum reserves are all around the country. You know, they're various spots. They're not all in one spot. And he had to completely deplete the Northeast Reserve, gasoline reserve. So let's hope we don't have to go to war next week, or we don't have a regional power outage, because there is no more gas in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the Northeast. And I'm just shaking my head. I can't think of any other reason he did this other than pandering to the electorate, because it is going to have zero impact on the price of gas. Can you think of any other reason?
No, not at all.
All right. So let's go back to 2020. When the pandemic started, who was president in 2020?
Donald Trump?
Was Joe Biden his vice president?
No.
Are you sure? Because because Biden thinks he was president in 2020.
Pence was vice president.
Mike Pence, are you sure? Because Joe Biden claims he was president during the pandemic. Let me play this little quick clip for you. Here's Joe Biden giving a speech about how he was vice president during the pandemic. Here we go.
And when I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. And what happened was, Barack said to me, go to Detroit and help fix it. Well, poor mayor, he spent more time with.
So do you need me to play that again?
Yeah, and what's the significance of Detroit in the pandemic?
I don't know. Here, let me play.
Means he ever thought he was going to have to.
Here we go. One more time, it repeats.
And when I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. And what happened was, Barack said to me, go to Detroit and help fix it.
Now, I think he's confused. He was probably trying to talk about during the recession of 2008, 2009. I think that's what he meant to say, but he clearly said
But he wasn't president. He wasn't vice president then either.
When Obama,
he was Barack Obama. He was before Trump, right?
Right, and we had Obama. There was from 2009 to 2016.
Yeah, but wasn't the recession in like 2008?
It was early. It started late 2008 and went, through the first 3 quarters of 2009. So I think he's confusing the recession of 2009 with the pandemic of 2020.
Okay.
So, but again, that's
a recession and a pandemic, man. Those are two pretty
two different things. So that's President Biden thinking he was. And again, I think it's just another sign that he's losing it, because I think what he was referring to was the recession, and that's why he went to Detroit, because Detroit was being hit hard by the recession.
But my question is, like, he's got speech writers. Where are his speech writers? And who's reading these things for him?
Know. And he's got a teleprompter. By the way, I've given many speeches from a teleprompter. It's right there, and there's a person controlling the speed. They can stop it, they can pause it, they can slow it down. He's got a teleprompter, and he says the word pandemic when the teleprompter clearly says recession. All right. So, you've talked many times about the primaries and how the voting for judges And prosecutors are just as important as voting for senators and congressmen.
Yeah, and I believe New Jersey just had their primaries, right?
They did. Anyway, so here's Senator Ted Cruz. And I can't play the whole thing. It's 10 minutes long, but I'll try to play 5 minutes. He's interviewing a woman who's a nominee, Biden nominee for a federal district judge position. And a little background, she took a guy who was a convicted rapist, and after he had served time for serial, he was convicted serial rapist. And after he was released, served some time, was released, and violated his parole, he was going to be resentenced. And during the time, he had started to identify as a woman, and he requested that he be, since he was going to go back to jail, he said, "Well, I identify as a woman, and I want to go back to I want to be resentenced to a woman's correctional facility to serve out the rest of my time." And why he was there? What do you think a convicted serial rapist did once he got sent to a woman's correctional facility?
I'm guessing he probably raped a bunch of women while he was there.
He raped 2 more women. So here's Senator Cruz interviewing this judicial nominee about her whether it's her politics or the law and the concern. And this gets pretty heated. And by the way, there's one spot I may have to skip over, but here we go. Senator Ted Cruz questioning this female judicial nominee.
Court, what matters more? The rights of individuals or your political ideology?
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
My political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology. This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
Yeah. By the way, did you hear her refer to him just now as a she?
Yes.
That was not a slip of the tongue. I'm going to back that up. She refers to this guy who still has his male genitalia as a she. Here we go.
Petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole, but then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago, you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're
Yes,
asking me?
the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me and I reached a decision.
I asked you a
based on what
question.
the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, the beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge. With
This incredible
hang on.
product dissolves.
And there's a little commercial here. I've got to skip through this commercial. Hang on.
You know, I don't know what the laws in the judicial system are for assigning
no
people
bearing
who do this.
I'm sorry.
But
So that,
I don't know what the laws are, the rules for when somebody goes to prison, whether you go to a man's prison or a women's prison. But if you've still got your man parts, I'm thinking you shouldn't be going to a woman's prison.
yeah, if I was a judge, I would say, fine, come back to me as soon as you've voluntarily been castrated, and I'll be happy to accommodate. So I'll just play about 1 more minute of this. Here we go.
Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretic." Have you dealt, in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case,
I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
And I'm going to end it there. But what do you think of her decision to send?
Yeah, again, I don't know what the rules are, but if you've still got your man parts, you shouldn't be in a women's prison.
Right. And
And I
what
don't
do you-
even know, taking that a step further, these people that are on hormone therapy, I don't know if that hormone, if with respect to medical care, if that continues while you're in prison. I don't know the answer to that.
But and what he was quoting, he referred to the BOP. That was the Bureau of Prisons, and the Bureau of Prisons would basically send her a letter saying, "Judge, we think this would be extreme risk," and she ignored the
Mhm.
Bureau of Prisons recommendation that don't do this.
Yep.
So I don't know if this judge is going to get confirmed or not. All she needs is 50 votes plus Kamala Harris to confirm her. So I don't know if there'll be a single Democrat who won't vote to confirm her, but I'm shaking my head that, number one, this woman got nominated. And if she gets approved as a judicial judge, I'm just shaking my head. What do you think?
Yeah, she's got some serious thinking to do
Right.
on her choices.
Yeah. So that's where we are. But I love, we've talked about Robert Kennedy from Louisiana. I love him, and I love Ted Cruz. And by the way, that goes on for another 5 minutes. Everybody wants to listen to it. Producer Susan, can you put that link up?
Yep, I can put the whole conversation up on our website.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes. I only played the first 5, but it gets really back and forth. Then he gets arguing with some other senators who won't let him. He asks a question and they cut him off. He says, you're picking on the witness, and it gets really, really heated. So the last 5 minutes, maybe next week we can play the last 5 minutes. But anyway, so you want to move on to 6-foot distance rule?
Yeah, how did that come about?
Well, you assume that there was some testing and science, and they had a virologist, right, about how far a virus particle can move in ambient air, right? You assume they did all sorts of studies, right?
Yeah.
Well, Here's a quote from the testimony of National Institute of Health Director Francis Collins on the origin of the 6-foot distancing rule. Here's a question by the council on the majority council. So moving on to social distancing and various regulations surrounding that. On March 22nd, 2020, the CDC issued guidelines describing social distancing to include remaining, et cetera, et cetera. We asked Dr. Fauci where the 6-foot rule came from, and he said it just kind of appeared. It was his quote. Do you recall the science or evidence that supported that 6-foot distance? And you know what his reply was? I do not. I do not. And then they asked him for evidence. So he said, well, do you have any evidence? And he says, and Dr. Khan says, I did not see the evidence. I'm not even sure it exists. So basically they pulled the 6-foot rule out of their butt. There is no science behind the 6-foot rule. So that's how government comes up with those things. So
I mean, the only thing I was thinking of, so I don't know if people know this, but the length of your arm span is how tall you are. And if the average person, you know, the average man 6 feet tall, I mean, that's your personal bubble. But
right.
there's no science behind that.
Right. So there was no science, never any science of this. It could have been 4 feet, could have been 2 feet, could have been 10 feet. Anyway, let's go on to getting hit by an EV. So this was the London School of Hygiene and Medicine. So they found out that it's more than twice as high, the risk of a pedestrian being hit by an EV. And they don't have an exact reason, but they suspect a couple of things. Number one, they're quiet, you don't hear them coming. Number two, even if the driver sees you, it takes longer because an EV is 2,000 to 3,000 pounds heavier because of the batteries than a regular car, and it takes them longer to stop. And here's the third thing. He said younger, less experienced drivers are more likely to be involved in road traffic collisions, and they are the same drivers who are more likely to own electric cars. So younger drivers, pedestrians can't hear them, and even if the driver sees you, it takes him longer to stop. So yes, you're more than twice as likely to get hit by an electric vehicle than a regular car. All right, let's move on to meme stocks. Have you ever, there used to be a phrase called pump and dump. You ever hear the phrase pump and dump?
No.
Well, that's when these people used to go, they used to pump up a stock. Oh, this is a great stock, sliced bread. You know, they put out press releases and they were hoping to get people to buy these really crappy, these were like penny stocks. And they were, they put out emails to people hoping to get a lot of people to buy the stock and drive up the price. And as soon as the stock went up, they would dump their shares. Well, last week, a couple of social media influencers began to pump through social media memes on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Two companies, one which was GameStop. You know GameStop, right? Where you go to get the
Yeah. They did the short stop.
Right. And then
what do you call it? When they drove up the price of the stock to make it worthless.
Right. And then the other one was AMC movie. That somebody came out, oh yeah, there's all these great summer movies. It's going to be a great summer. Well, here's what happened to those stocks on Monday, May 13th. So this is 2 weeks ago. On that Monday morning, GameStop shares opened the day at $26.30 per share. By 9:30 the next morning, Tuesday, 24 hours, their share price had soared by 246% to $64.83 a share. By the close of trading on Friday that same week, their shares had plummeted back to $22.23 per share, which was 10% lower than the price they had started the week at on Monday morning. So, folks, if you see social media posts about a great stock, this stock is getting ready to tear loose, you ought to get in now. It was just a variation of the pump and dump. It went from 26.30 up to $64 a share, and then collapsed back to $22 a share. The people who sold it short made hundreds of $1,000s, and the people who were foolish enough to buy it lost tens of thousands of dollars. So that's pump and dump and meme stock. So don't ever buy a stock because you see it on social media. All right, how much time we got left?
You got about 10 minutes.
All right, well, let's talk about why we call them taxpayer relief shots. Haven't done this in a while, but you know, if a thug is arrested and gets a trial, first of all, the thug can't afford his own attorney. So, you know, the taxpayers have to pay for a public defender, and then there's a trial. And of course, you're paying the salaries of not only his attorney, you're paying the salaries of the judge and the prosecutors and district attorney and the jury and the courtroom. And the trial might go on for 3, 4, 5 days. So that's a $200,000 trial. And then if he gets convicted and gets sent to jail for 10 years, it's $80,000 a year to go to send somebody to jail. So to arrest a thug, give him a jury trial and send him to jail is $1 million bill. That's why we call him. So what happens if the victim shoots the thug instead? I'll let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explain why he prefers you shoot these guys. Here we go, if I can find it.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
And then, of course, we have our two from Sheriff Grady Judd down in Polk County, Florida. Let's see, how about this one?
But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
Now, I love that blow you back out of the house with their guns, but there's one more, and you've heard this one before, Producer Susan. Here we go.
I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
You know, I'm just wondering, how come we only get sheriffs out of Florida who are willing to say stuff like that? Do you think any sheriff in Pennsylvania? I don't think a New Jersey sheriff would ever say anything like that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of counties, you know, not in around Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, but yeah, I think there's some sheriffs in some other more rural counties that would definitely
echo that same sentiment. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we go. This comes to us from Detroit, where an unarmed victim turns the tables on armed thugs. Here we go.
Deadly, but it wasn't the victim that was fatally injured.
7 Action News reporter Simon Shaykat shows you how the tables turned on these crooks.
Police say an armed robbery in this neighborhood did not go as expected when the victim decided to fight back. When it was all over, within a matter of seconds, one person was dead and another one on his way to the hospital.
For these individuals that may be thinking about robbing somebody, it's always possible that you end up getting harmed yourself.
Detroit police say that's exactly what happened here along Annett Street near East State Fair late Monday night.
There were two individuals and the intent was to rob, to do a robbery. Subsequently, those two people were shot.
Shot by a man they thought would just give up the cash. Instead, he wrestled away their gun, killing one armed robber, wounding the other. Police say there's also a third person involved, a girl who may have planned it all. But so far, no names being released.
We believe that she had something to do with setting up this whole particular incident.
She could also be in hot water with the law after cooperating, then changing her mind.
She was being held in a room for questioning, and she walked out of that room and walked right out the front door. We were looking for her all through the night, trying to recover her. The positive side of that is she has been recovered.
With two suspects surviving and in custody and the victim cooperating with police, they say they've turned over their findings to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office to determine what will happen next. From Detroit's East Side, Simon Shaykat, 7 Action News.
All right.
So actually, it was a girl who planned it and two thugs. And the other guy didn't run away. He got taken to the hospital. But here's to add insult to injury. now we know the thug that got wounded can be charged with murder, right?
Actually, they all can because of any death involved in a commission of a felony.
Yeah. Well, actually, the dead guy can't be charged with
Well,
murder.
the dead guy can't be, but the
Yeah,
girl
but
who supposedly planned it can.
right, and the guy and other thug that got wounded
Mhm.
can all be charged with homicide
Yep.
because somebody died during the commission of a felony. All right. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, it's, like you said at the beginning, it's Labor Day and this,
No, it's Memorial Day. It's
I'm
not
sorry,
Labor Day.
Memorial Day. Is Memorial Day, and I'm here in the birthplace of Memorial Day in Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, and it's sadly it's been a bit of a washout. The parade on Saturday night, and then yesterday was the all the solemn ceremonies, and today was the big car show and the craft fair, and it's been a little bit of a wash.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, maybe next year. All right.
We did make it over last night for dinner, but
Okay. Well, good. All right. Well, I know we're running out of time, so let me wrap up here. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things that I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found these topics as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to the podcast in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and the story links you heard me talk about and maybe listen to the Ted Cruz thing, producer Susan will put them up
Yep.
on the Jerzee Joe website. And that's jerzeejoe.com, and with Jersey being spelled Jerzee, Jerze, jerzeejoe.com. If you want to send me an email with a comment, question, or suggested show top, do that by sending me an email to simply joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee Joe with a Z and a double E. Other than that, producer Susan, anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
enjoy the rest of your holiday.
I will too. I'll be on vacation the rest of the week, but I'll talk to you next week. All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.